So yes, let's talk about something that is very controversial. A lot of people do not want to talk about it. However, it is being hinted about in the immigration world. We know that when a particular culture builds something, a nation or a society, it constructs a society, and the original inhabitants of that society are no longer around to sustain that society, then it starts to deteriorate and fall apart like like Atlantis did years ago, like Tartaria did years ago, and like the United States is doing that. What's happening in Europe? What's happening in Europe right now? The original population is being replaced with people from third world nations right now in London. Over 60% of the people who live in London and in Paris, by the way, were not born in Europe at all. And I know you may have seen the news stories. A lot of it's being buried of the rise in crime rate and criminal rate, different types of crimes over there. And just the fact that what multiculturalism does, it destroys nations. Okay, it destroys cultures. It destroys uh, societies and civilizations, and it's a fact. It's something that we need to speak about. What is happening in Europe today? Uh, will Berlin, will Paris look like Detroit in another 20, 30 years? Well, yes, it will. It will look exactly like Detroit and probably worse. And it comes to beg, like, let's ask the hard questions here. What if the Anglo-Saxon Goy picked their own cotton? What if there was no slavery here in the United States? What if African Americans were never introduced here as laborers under an indentured servant program, the same way the Irish came here? You come here and you work for free for a number of years, and then you're made a free person of color. There were plenty of free people of color in the Deep South who completed their indentured servant programs. However, history will not reflect that, and it tells a different story. They even fabricated a civil war behind it by claiming that was the reason. But let's take a look at something. I mean, let's take a look at the 46.8 million people who identify as black in the United States. Okay? 1 in 4 black people were born prior to the year 2000. So there's a lot of new ones out there. Over half of the black people in the United States live in the Deep South. Okay? Now, forever, you've been looking at stats that claim that they make up 13% of the country. Now, there's like 350 million people here, and 48 million identify as black. So the math is kind of wrong there. It is more than 13%. The reason why they do not want to put the correct number there is they don't want people getting nervous over this. It's a sneak attack. It is the Trojan horse. That 13% number is a Trojan horse. So, I mean, one day you're going to wake up and it's going to be like the state of Mississippi. It's like 48% of the state is black, and it reflects on, Mississippi is a freaking dump. Memphis is a dump. East St. Louis is a dump. And before you discard this as a racist rant, I challenge you to not be so Don't be so intellectually dishonest with yourself, okay? 46.8 million people in the U.S. identify as black. Imagine if they wasn't here. Imagine the crime rate. Where is the crime rate? When you look at a city like New Orleans, that was averaging over 300 murders a year. Now, that number has come down. The overall violent crime numbers are starting to decrease in the United States, but that has nothing to do with law enforcement or anything like that. It's just people are evolving. People are evolving a little more. If you notice, they're not smoking cigarettes. They're kind of evolving just a little bit, but not by much. And out of the 300, and I've just seen this, here it is. Now, this is back in the height of violent crime in the 1990s. 89% of the murderers from the city of New Orleans were black. A very large percentage of all violent crime is committed by young black men. And before you speak about poverty, before you blame poverty for causing violent crime in the USA, I challenge you to go to Appalachia. Go to Appalachia, because those people are really poor. Yet violent crime is almost non-existent in Appalachia. Why is that? What's the difference? They're poor. They live in extreme poverty. They even have a big drug epidemic in Appalachia. Prescription drug epidemic. Some people from Appalachia claim that it was a conspiracy among the medical community and the U.S. government to flood that area of the nation with prescription narcotics. Now, whether that's true or not, it doesn't really matter, because what you have there is poverty and you have high drug use, but what you don't have is violent crime. And you must be honest with yourself, okay? This is not a racist rant. This is the truth. This is honesty. What is the cause of the violent crime? Why do black people refuse to assimilate into mainstream American culture? And I'm going to compare them to Native Americans for 1 second. Now, Native Americans have their own reservation. They choose to drink alcohol all day. I don't know why that is. I don't know why they do not go back to living as Indians. It seems like if they went back to being natives, a lot of these social problems that exist in these reservations will kind of solve themselves. And the reason why I'm using this is there's an argument right now for reparations and for the whole 40-acre and the mule deal, which I'm all for. I'm all for taking the black folks and putting them on a reservation like we did with the savages, the American Indian. Because they couldn't assimilate in mainstream American culture. Native Americans were just unable to assimilate. Some of them did, but most of them, as a culture, as an egregor, they didn't. And that's what's important here, because black people, as a group, as a social group, as a psychological egregor, are unable to assimilate in mainstream American culture. And you have to ask yourself, how long will this go on? How long will we allow the people who ride the short bus into the regular classrooms? Because all we're doing is lying to ourselves. And we making and creating excuses as to why a certain group of people are unable to assimilate into mainstream society, why they are killing so many people, why they refuse to live in peace. They're like those people in Gaza. They just can't stop terrorizing the good people that are around them. It's just a little evil, just like a little bit of evil there. Okay? You have to ask yourself at what time, when do Europeans and European Americans, people of European descent, decide to put their foot down like the Israelis are? Because the Israelis had it. They tried for decades to live in peace with the people in that area. Those people do not like Jews. Those people cause trouble. They are unable to evolve. They are unable to evolve and assimilate into an Israeli culture, a two-party solution. They are unable to comply with this two-party solution. And they just said, well, the Israelis said, well, we are sick and tired of being killed. We are sick and tired of our children and women being harmed. We are sick and tired of the kidnappings and the murders and the bombings. And they decided they were just going to get rid of the other people who are disrupting their lives. And at what point do Europeans and European Americans say, it's time to put us first, our people first, and bring it back, bring this society, this great society that we had for ourselves just a few decades ago. Because at some point it has to come to an end. At some point, you're going to have to put your children and grandchildren first in front of other people who do not care if your children or grandchildren exist in the future. It's a serious discussion that must be had. It must be had. This discussion has to come out into the open. And we have to make a decision. I mean, either we continue to allow your heritage, the culture, the society that you created, that your grandfathers created for you and your grandchildren, there has to come a point where we have to take it back. It just has to happen. Multiculturalism never worked. It did not work in the biblical days. The Tower of Babel was a lesson to us about multiculturalism. It didn't work back then, and it will not work in the future. And in order for the people on earth who are capable of advancing and are capable of evolving into a higher consciousness, they're going to have to cut this dead weight off of their ankles and off of their feet so they can float to the surface and become the best people that they can. I invite you people, the brave ones, because it's going to take really brave people to come out into the public and talk about this. No one wants to bring up this discussion. That there's a group of people here in the United States that refuse to assimilate and refuse to evolve and are hell-bent on taking everyone down who can. And it's the same thing that's happening to the Israelis is happening to European Americans and Europeans in Europe. Europeans in Europe, or in some of these towns in Sweden, they are hostages in their own towns. There are no-go zones in Sweden where a native Swedish person cannot go. He cannot go into these areas. It is not safe for them. This is their homeland, and it's not even safe for them to go there. Of course, Americans learned this lesson in the 1970s. We moved out of the big cities because they were no longer safe to live there. They were no longer safe to raise your children in these big cities. So at what point do we not only fight back, but at what point do we start to speak about this openly? And when people say, "Oh, you're a racist," so what? So what? If that's the best thing you can up with, instead of asking yourself a question, why is this particular group of people refusing to assimilate into mainstream culture? Why do they commit violent acts? Why are they so full of hatred? And why, most importantly, why are you throwing away your heritage, your culture, your homelands to please a group of foreign people?